Check, 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 check. Yes, y'all. I know it sounds weird. It's me. It's not Greg. There's so much more energy when Greg does this show, and I'm just here to be the Ed McMahon in the background. My name is Max Thompson. I don't know what I'm doing at all. This is DCTF Live. Greg is what we would like to call indisposed today. I really appreciate him leaving me out to dry this time of year. It's not like there's anything going on or anything. But I got a fun show today anyway, if you're okay putting up with just me. Won't be as much going on graphically or visually if you're watching it, but we're still going to try and get some good content in the show. So Danny Davis, my good friend at the Austin American-Statesman, is going to join us here in a few minutes, and we're going to do a massive, massive deep dive on everything Central Texas right now, everything in the Austin area, some big wins. And they've still got 8 teams alive in Danny's coverage area, like Travis, Westlake, Cedar Park, Vista Ridge, Vandegrift, Liberty Hill, Giddings, and Wimberley, which was kind of a surprise for me. So really excited to talk to him about those teams and some of the other storylines in Central Texas this year. And everything that's going on now with four games to go, I guess, and who we might end up seeing at NRG. So looking forward to that. In the meantime, some pretty interesting results over the weekend. The ones that jump out, high school level, obviously Allen's win over DeSoto, and maybe more so that DeSoto pushed them to the brink. If you were there at AT&T Stadium, you saw a game for the ages. It seems like it doesn't really matter what the records are with Allen DeSoto. Whenever they play, it's an incredible game. And I almost feel like DeSoto redeemed themselves for the kind of season that they've had by pushing Allen to the brink. And it was just sort of one of those heartbreaking endings for DeSoto yet again, as the extra point that would have tied the game in the fourth quarter is missed. And your heart goes out to them for that kind of comeback. I don't think anyone expected them to win that game, and yet there they were. So that was pretty amazing. Dickinson, meanwhile, down at NRG, takes Pearland 4 overtimes. I'm jealous I wasn't there for this, but if you saw the tweets from anyone or read any of the game reports from the people that were there, another game for the ages. Jordan Myers with an incredible performance, putting the team on his back. Now Dickinson, has carved themselves out a path. And then Refugio, 42-7 over Mason. Biggest shock of the weekend by far. Mason, a great team. And just Refugio on a tour of reckoning, maybe. Headed for a rematch with Shiner, which I think we're all looking forward to. And then on the college side, look, Baylor took care of business in Oklahoma. At Oklahoma State, really impressive performance. Can't say enough about what Chris Johnson, the Brian High great, did in a relief role. And TCU almost ruining everything for Oklahoma. Really impressive performance in Norman, all things considered, with all the injuries they've dealt with. Really, really impressive performance. And then SMU, we gotta throw SMU a bone, right? Second win of the year. Chad Morris's project going better, obviously, as the year's going on. Smoking Tulane. Big win for them. But we're going to shift gears from those big storylines, and there were so many more. Those I'm just scratching the surface there, but that's the stuff that first came to mind. And we're going to deep dive on Central Texas here. Danny's going to call here in a second. We're gonna go in on lots of the stuff going on there. I wrote a guest column for the Lake Travis View this week. Michael Adams, the editor there, in my old position, reached out and asked if I could write something about the team and sort of where things are for Lake Travis. And we're going to get into that with Danny here a little bit. I wrote a lot about perception and how if you're in the Central Texas area and you're covering high school football, you really try to give the Central Texas area credit, and you really try to not overvalue maybe the DFW or the Houston area, and it's not always easy. And to talk a little bit more about that is my good friend Danny Davis at the Austin American-Statesman. Daniel, how are you doing today?
Maximilian, I'm doing good. How are you?
I can't complain. This is super weird for me, trying to do this show by myself, and so I appreciate you hopping on and basically carrying me.
Oh, well, what are good friends for, I guess.
That's right.
I'm not a good carrier, though, so I'll try not to drop you.
It's all right. So I was just talking, our good friend Michael Adams, the editor at Westlake and Lake Travis, asked me to write a guest column this week for the Lake Travis View, which I'm not sure how all of those people will feel about that. I'm sure some people will be excited. Some people will be a little annoyed that my face is popping up in their paper again.
Everybody misses you down here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, everyone misses me. The thing that I wrote about, and it's something that I wanted to talk to you about, you've been covering Central Texas football as long as I have, back to the start, and even longer since I snuck away for a few years. I wrote about Lake Travis and the perception problem that sort of comes with wherever you are in the state and the teams you're covering. So the first few years I was at Lake Travis, it was sort of this weighing inevitability of which DFW or Houston team or even San Antonio team would knock Lake Travis out before they sort of climbed to the top. And then by the end of that run, it was pretty clear, that it would take something really special to beat Lake Travis. And now they've had a few years at 6A where things haven't come so easily. And I wrote about looking at the brackets as the playoffs started and undervaluing Lake Travis despite being undefeated, and sitting here thinking that clearly Cedar Hill or South Lake Carroll was the team to beat in that region. And now Lake Travis, obviously with a big win over Spring Westfield, 28-21, really wasn't that close if you followed it. Westfield obviously made a run at the end, and I know you were there. I guess my biggest thing for you, and sort of speaking to this perception thing, when you've been sizing up Lake Travis's chances the last couple years, how have you tried to weigh how good they are in front of you versus how good these teams in DFW and Houston seem from afar?
We talk about this every year, and Lake Travis's biggest problem is that district that they're in. They get a challenge from Westlake every year, and they'll get a challenge from Bowie, and this goes for Westlake too. But they try to schedule some people early. This year kind of worked out a little bit, getting midway to start the season, but Cove was not nearly as good as I'm sure Coach Carter was thinking it'd be 2 years ago. So it's just tough to tell. I mean, they get in the playoffs. These Houston and Dallas State just played better competition throughout the season, and it's just tough to kind of measure teams up against them. And I think that was a problem last year. They went through pretty much 10 weeks without playing anyone, including the by-district opponent, and they got in the second round and actually had to play a team that was actually at their level, and I think it hurt them, and some of the kids just weren't used to seeing that kind of that level of play. And so this is a good Lake Travis team. Their defense is good. Their offense is efficient even after their running back went down, and it's just a matter of what's going to happen on that. I guess they're playing on Saturdays now. I think this week they're fine against the way, but who knows when next round there's not going to be any garbage teams in the state quarterfinals and state semifinals, so it's just going to be a matter of who's playing well. And I'm sure the kids have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder that they're consistently overlooked. They read the message boards, they see Twitter, so it'll be fun. But it's tough to tell who's better, who's worse. I mean, everyone plays different teams, but Lake Travis has definitely had a disadvantage in the regular season.
Yeah, and the funny thing, though, is I am sort of kicking myself because I don't really feel bad about the Cedar Hill pick. I mean, here's a team that beat Lake Travis last year and up until the playoffs seemed like the preeminent team, aside from Allen, in the DFW area. And then I don't know why, but I still felt like after South Lake Carroll got through, oh well, South Lake Carroll will probably be the best team, and yet I completely sort of overlooked the fact that Westlake handled South Lake Carroll with ease at the beginning of the season, and now I just feel dumb, and so. So now I sort of feel like the DFW surrounding me is sort of creeping in, and now I feel stupid for doubting Lake Travis and Hank Carter, but whatever. So, but to that point, and that's sort of my transition to Westlake here. I know Greg and I both thought the Woodlands would beat them. Woodlands was 14-7 to Katy earlier this year, great defense, and yet Westlake didn't really seem to have any problem with them. How good is this Westlake team now? I mean, aren't they the weirdest team to try and figure out in the playoffs? It seems like they're always great in the regular season, maybe lose a game or two here or there, and then they just find ways to make runs.
Look, I mean, I picked against Westlake last week too, so don't feel too bad. I live down here. I mean, Westlake it's Westlake. I mean, they have one loss. It was a really bad loss against Lake Travis. I mean, Lake Travis has pounded them, and they lost by 21, but it wasn't a 21-point game. It should have been about 28. But Westlake we have two really great players in the Austin area this year. Two great players, and one of them attends Westlake, and he has some good weapons around him with his wide receivers. We always talk about the running game isn't anything to write home about outside of Sam, but that offense is fine. They can score, and their defense has been playing really well. I was doing some numbers today, and it looks like only one player has rushed for over 100 yards against him, and that kid goes to Aiken. So, I mean, their defense has been playing really well outside of the Lake Travis game. The Lake Travis game seems to be the outlier on the schedule, but their defense is good. Their offense has a great quarterback and some good complementary pieces, and you can get hot and get on a run. I mean, it seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't so long ago that they were in the state semifinals, and it was a field goal away from reaching a state championship. So, Westlake's good. All
right, so let's get away from the teams everyone really likes to talk about and give some love to some of the other ones here. It's basically the results from the weekend made Greg and I look at each other and go, well, it's Cedar Park's title to lose at this point. Is that the way you think they feel? Is that the way you feel about the team at this point?
I'm expecting to be in a couple of weeks, and I expect Cedar Park to be there, and anyone else who wants to join us, that'll be fine with me. Right? In Cedar Park, this week shouldn't be a problem. You assume the Bernie champion is going to be in the quarterfinals, and Bernie champion needed a last-second win over a Georgetown team that Cedar Park killed. So,
yeah,
I mean, injuries and stuff can happen.
Sure.
Park lost their linebacker a couple weeks ago, or probably their top linebackers. So, stuff can happen. I mean, they just looked incredible against Tybee, and they're so efficient, so deep, and their sophomore quarterback is becoming a man before our eyes. So, I think Cedar Park's going to be in the championship game. Yes.
And, the only hiccup there is this Vista Ridge team is playing pretty well. Matt Snow at quarterback obviously has been really good this year. Do you, if they end up meeting in that regional final, is there any chance that the Rangers find a way? Is there something they might be, better suited at to find a wrinkle and get through Cedar Park?
Well, they'd be playing Vandegrift, so I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, that's right. See, this is what happens when Greg leaves, and I have to do everything by myself. You're right.
But the Vista Ridge team is good, and they're gonna. I expect them and Vandegrift to be playing in a couple of weeks. There'll be a rematch of a great game that Rick Cantu got to cover about a month ago. So I called dibs on the state quarterfinal matchup, and that'll be fun because Vandegrift's a different team than they were a month ago, and Vista Ridge is pretty much the same kind of efficient. Matt Snow, Isaiah Valera show, and it'll be fun when those two teams meet, and it'll be a well-deserved trip to the state semifinals.
Well, let's build off of that a little bit. How much different is this Vandegrift team than it was, say, 4 weeks ago?
To be honest, it's really tough to tell. I mean, they Travis Brandon hasn't played a fourth quarter in a month.
That's right.
They haven't been tested. When Paxton went down in the Georgetown game, I think they kind of took their foot off the brake, not to take anything away from Georgetown, and Georgetown won in that game. But Vandegrift, I think me and you have talked about this, but they saw one of their teammates get airlifted out of their stadium. They had nothing to play for in that game, so I think Travis only ran the ball like 3 or 4 times in that game, had more receiving yards than he did rushing yards, and once again they pulled him and the rest of their starters early. So they haven't really been tested. I mean, Sam Marcus threw an early punch last week, but Vandergrift blew that game out by halftime, and nothing against Cedar Creek, but that game was over after the first quarter. So, I don't expect this week to be much of a challenge, but next week when they have to play 4 quarters against whoever they end up playing, that could be really interesting to see who, how they do and how that defense looks against an actual formidable offense. But I've liked what they've done so far. Losing your second best offensive player is not easy at this stage of the game. They've kept on rolling, and Travis Brandon's. I talked about Sam Ellinger being one of the top 2 offensive players in the area, and Travis was the other one. So he's been great in the playoffs.
Let's talk about the smaller schools here for a second. I don't think, looking at our season rankings this year and some of the performances, and honestly, pedigree with Liberty Hill, that it's all that surprising that Liberty Hill and Giddings are still rolling at this point. Are you surprised, though, that Wimberley has joined them?
Wimberley's 5-7. So yes, I'll actually walk that back a little bit. I am, but I'm not surprised.
Okay.
I mean, they started off the season terribly. 0-6. There's no real way around it. That's not a good start. But at the same time, they came into the season with Hunter Williams, their running back, I think was their most experienced player in offense as far as their skill players are concerned. And I think he had 5 carries last year. So I think the coaches knew that it was going to be a slow start on offense. They had a lot of pieces back on defense, and their offensive line was pretty intact from last year. So they had some pieces to build around, but those skill players, it was going to take them a while to get used to. They had played a pretty decent non-district schedule. I know Giddings was on it, and they played Giddings pretty close. So they got off to a slow start, but as soon as district started and some of those kids started growing up a little bit and maturing and getting some varsity time under their belt, their offense picked up a little bit. The defense has been great outside of the Navarro game over these past 6 weeks, and they've been playing really well. And that team, the Orange Grove team they beat last week, was averaging about 50 points per game, and they held them to 7. So that's impressive. No matter who you're playing in the second round of the playoffs. So Coach Warren and they've done a good job, and kudos to the players for sticking with it and not freaking out after an 0-6 start, because that could go a lot of different ways. And they went to the third round of the playoffs.
It's very interesting. One thing I wanted to backtrack on with your expertise down there is the UIL realignment. Now, we learned a few of these schools are going to be making some major moves next year. I felt like the team that benefits most from its move is probably Austin High down to 5A. Is that how you feel?
Well, Max, you know how much I love talking about realignment in November. But Austin High, dropping is going to help. They're going to be going into a easier district. Assuming what happens to Bastrop and Cedar Creek, which is kind of a mystery. At the 5A level, there's about 10 different things that can happen with these schools. But I'd say if Austin High drops down and maybe Bastrop and Cedar Creek move out, that is it's them in LBJ for that, because I think McCallum's kind of on trending down a little bit until they can rebuild that program. So, depending on what happens there, it kind of depends on who you match up with in the first round. And Austin High did beat Dripping Springs this year, and Dripping Springs was a playoff contender in 25-5A, and that 25-5A district is not going to look the same as it did as these past couple of years. So, everyone talks about how Austin High hasn't won a playoff game since the 1950s, and you know what? If they don't get Cedar Park in the first round next year, maybe that streak ends. So, I think Austin High is very happy with moving down, even though some fans may mourn the fact that they don't have Westlake and Bowie on their schedule anymore. But those games really weren't rivalries anymore, especially the Westlake one. Westlake was winning by 50 points. So, move on.
The Austin High kids were probably winning in the stands, though. They always seem to have better chance than the Westlake kids, so I'll give them that.
That doesn't take much effort. The Westlake kids need to show up to games to have good chance. So.
What's the latest on that? Who is the best student section across the board in Centex? Is there a new clubhouse leader?
I've always been a fan of LBJ. I like what LBJ does. They got a little out of control at some points this year, especially in the McCallum game. I've always thought those kids are pretty creative, and winning-wise, winning kind of does a lot of things for people. And so Leander kids have always been kind of good. The Cedar Park Vandergrift game this year was a lot of fun, just with the way that their students were interacting with each other. So give me the Leander ISD schools. And Lake Travis actually, their student section traveled pretty well this past week down to Brenham, and they have a Twitter account, and they don't mind going after some opposing players and fans, which is fine as long as you keep it clean. So as long as the kids are vocal and having fun and not making fools out of themselves, it's a pretty cool thing to see.
The Lake Travis fan Twitter account is next level stuff. I was not prepared for that when I first saw them pop up on my feed. So definitely some props for that. Some maybe right now we're only talking about the teams in the playoffs, but one question I did want to ask you, going into this season and now looking back, which two teams, good and bad, surprised you the most with their performance? Which team exceeded your expectations the most, and which team kind of fell short in a way you weren't expecting?
Kind of looking at the landscape right now, Vista Ridge wasn't in our top 10 to begin the season. We were not. I wasn't really impressed. They had a decent season last year. They kind of fell apart at the end, and I wasn't sure how that would carry over to this year. And I think when we left them out of our preseason poll, we got a couple angry emails and phone calls from some Ranger fans. But they definitely proved us wrong this year, and I picked against them a couple times this year. And it's always I seem to take an L every single time I pick against them. So the Rangers have been they've at least exceeded my expectations. And there's some teams like Elgin fell apart this year, which was unexpected in my eyes. They lost some kids, but I expected them to at least make the playoffs. And this team's a little near and dear to me because of where my wife works. But McCallum not making the playoffs is just shocking out of that district, and
it's definitely
the
weird
pedigree
to
and
see
the
them in there.
tradition that they have. They just weren't good. I saw them probably like 3 or 4 times, and they just were not a good football team this year. And that was just surprising. Coach Taylor has a little bit of work to do to get that program up. They have some young pieces, so maybe they can build around those players. But I was shocked to see McCallum not make the playoffs because they're only 2 years away from 2 years removed from a playoff game, which is incredible as a 26-5A team. And last year they played Vandergrift pretty tough in the first round, so that was shocking.
All right, and before I let you go, I don't want you to give too much away because I know this is a big deal for your section down there. But can you go over a few of the players on the short list for Centex Player of the Year?
We've talked about, I think, the 2 front runners,
right.
Travis, Sam Ellinger. I think it's probably a 2-horse race between them. But Matt Snow's had a great year. Yeah, Matt Snow's had a great year at Vista Ridge. J.K. Dobbins was great at LaGrange, although he was hurt by losing out of the first round of the playoffs. I think wins do mean something. Tony Brown at Gerald, he was a 2,000-yard rusher, and he's probably going to be in contention for All-State on the defensive side of the ball. But once again, second round and out, so that kind of hurts him. It's kind of funny because probably the 2 best teams in our area are Lake Travis and Cedar Park, and I don't see either of them having a candidate. Cedar Park is just so deep and so balanced, and they don't have any standouts. They're just a good, balanced team, and Lake Travis has kind of been the same way. I thought Abe Willows was contend for the award earlier on. He certainly was until he got hurt. And they're just balanced. Charlie Brewer's been good this year, but his stats aren't going to pop out at you. But they're just doing what they need to do to win, and they're being efficient. They're being deep, and that's kind of been, I think, a storyline this year is how the great teams and the undefeated teams don't really have that standout player. They're doing it as a team.
Well, don't tell Greg that because he has a crush on Jav Guidry. It's a good thing he's not here. He'd be screaming bloody murder from the corner.
Jav's been very good too, but usually once every year we have at least we have 5 finalists and we have 1 defensive player. So I'm sure Jav will pop up once we get all the end of the year stats.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure, the other thing with Lake Travis and Cedar Park, obviously, is it's hard to rack up a lot of stats when you're only playing 2 quarters a week.
That's in it. And kudos to Coach Absek and Coach Carter. They pulled their starters at halftime, and me and you remember a time at Lake Travis where that did not happen. And starters be playing in the fourth quarter when they didn't need to be. And I don't think anything good comes out of padding stats, not letting the reserves play and hurting the other team's morale. So good. Good for those coaches for preserving their team and preserving some dignity for their opponents. And not running up the scores, even though they're still winning by 50, 60 points.
All right, last question. I always seem to ask you this every year, and it goes back to when I was at Lake Travis and working with you. All right, we're a few weeks out. How are you feeling about your odds of getting to state and covering a Central Texas team?
Like I said, I think Cedar Park is. I don't want to say shoe-in because it's going to the Houston area has in store. And, Crosby did lose this past weekend, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Cedar Park's path. But I'd imagine
I'll vote good, just so you don't have to.
I'd imagine Cedar Park's going to be there, and I wouldn't count out Vandegrift or Vista Ridge, although that semifinal opponent, as Vandegrift found out last year, is not going to be easy to get past. I assume that's probably going to be Temple, but it's I'd say a good chance of 5A, and then 6A. You just never know. I think from this point on for Westlake and Lake Travis, it wouldn't shock me if they made it. It wouldn't shock me. It would shock me if either of them lost this weekend, but it wouldn't shock me if either of them lost in the quarters or the semis. But both of those teams are good. I think Lake Travis and Giddings, and especially Wimberley, have a little bit more of an uphill climb because like obviously everybody else go through Navasota, and Giddings has some challenges ahead of them too. But I'd say 2 to 3. I expect to be covering.
All right, that's what we like to hear. I wouldn't be the same if I didn't get to hang out with you at the state championship.
Well, we have friends and a new baby to go hang out with in Houston. So
that's true. We do. We have to go see our friend MK. See, this is destiny. So Central Texas teams, get it done. He is Danny Davis of the Austin American-Statesman. Follow him on Twitter at AASDanny for all your Central Texas high school football needs and your Will Smith hot takes. Danny, thank you so much for coming on.
Yep, lots of time. All right, thanks.
See you, man. There he goes. Am I saying this stuff right? Am I doing it? Am I mimicking Greg well enough? I don't know if you guys all think so or not, but I'm trying. I just want you to know I'm trying. All right, I'm gonna get some business out of the way, and then I'm gonna send you happy customers off into your Monday and your holiday weekend. Thanksgiving, the best week of the year, if you talk to Greg Tepper, but Greg's not here, so we could say whatever we want. We won't, because we're nice, but. Hey, Texas high school football fans, when you make your plans for the state championship, book with Houston Hyatt Regency. It is an awesome hotel. It's very nice. If you go online and look, it's way too nice for people like me, which is offering hotel rooms to fans for a discounted rate of $129 per night and participating teams for $119 per night. Expect to be pampered at the finest contemporary hotel in downtown Houston as you get ready to dominate an NRG Stadium. Call 1-888-421-1442. That's 1-888-421-1442. When you're ready to book, and we'll see you December 17th through 20th in Houston. Let's see how many. I got a minute and a half here. Okay. What should we talk about? The other thing that Danny brought up, and obviously what I was alluding to, and I didn't mention at the beginning of the show, though, the other loss this weekend that was just stunning, Crosby. I mean, I think Greg and I felt like it was sort of a team of destiny year. We talked to Coach Jeff Reardon earlier this year. It just felt like we were going to see Crosby in Houston. And Fort Bend Ridgepoint did not care. Did not care one bit. It sounds like and looked like it was just one of those games where Ridgepoint was on. They had something to prove, and they snapped it for Crosby. We were really expecting a Cedar Park Crosby final. It didn't happen, and it does. It feels like it opens up that entire bracket for Cedar Park. And now Fort Bend Ridgepoint's got something to prove, and it'd be great if they took this win and built this momentum and kept going, because I think they'd be a really feel-good story and a really intriguing matchup at NRG when the time comes. So that was the other weekend this year that just made you scratch or result this weekend that made you scratch your head, and good for Fort Bend Ridgepoint, man. I mean, I wanted to see Crosby, but good for a team that no one was expecting to win that game, doing it handily the way that they did. So that's going to do it for DCTF Live. Make sure to follow us on Facebook. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Dave Campbell's TF on Instagram. Greg acts like he doesn't know what Instagram is, but he does. He's lying every time he says that. Follow us on Twitter, DCTF. I think that's everything. Tune in every day at noon on texasfootball.com/live to watch DCTF live. We're going to have shows tomorrow, Wednesday. We are taking Turkey Day off, but we'll be back on Friday. We're going to have a little fun playoff extravaganza on Friday, just Greg and I hanging out here in the office, so it should be good. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for putting up with me. I only screwed up one thing, the 5A bracket discussion with the Leander ISD teams. I apologize for that. I got ahead of myself thinking about that Vista Ridge Vandy clash and asked the question one too soon. But otherwise, I think it went okay. I really appreciate you guys putting up with me. I do. Especially our loyal followers like Matt Stepp, who really, I'm sure, just tune in to listen to whatever great thing Greg has to say that day about life, love, everything. His wisdom is invaluable for the rest of us. All right, that's going to do it. I appreciate you guys tuning in and for watching these clips afterwards. We will see you tomorrow at the same time, and Greg will be back, and it'll be way better for all of us.